If you're building a SaaS app, landing large customers means supporting large-scale needs, like provisioning user accounts and managing permissions from a central directory. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to add SCIM provisioning to a Node app using WorkOS. Huge thanks to WorkOS for sponsoring this tutorial. I'm Jason Lengsdorf. Let's learn something new.
All right, so our first step is going to be making sure that we've got the GitHub repo Node Express SCIM WorkOS example cloned and on the start branch. Inside of it, you're going to see a fairly straightforward Express setup. We're using Postgres to manage sessions and manage the data for the app. We're using EJS for our templates. We're storing the session in the database so that we can manage those as part of our directory syncing. And then we have our route setup. So this app already has the SSO configured, and you can see that inside of auth.js. We've also got a dashboard setup that's got all of the configuration for displaying the current user, as well as some placeholders for things that we're going to get to later. Then we've got our public route, which is just displaying a couple public pages, and the API route, which is doing a couple things like deleting posts, and then it's got this placeholder for the directory sync. So this is what we're going to be building in. We are going to focus only on the SCIM setup, so everything else is already running. To get this functional, the first thing we need to do is make sure that we've got our environment variable set up. So I'm going to rename this file to .env, and then we need to go and get all of these values. In your WorkOS account, if we've got the organization set up, this is the one that we're using for single sign-on in this app. You're going to grab your org ID, and that is going to go into the org ID there. Next, head over into configuration, and that's going to give us our client ID, so we can copy that, and we're going to drop that into here. The redirect URI is also going to be on this page. We are using /auth/callback, so make sure that that's configured in your WorkOS account, or if you change it, just make sure you update that both in the .env as well as in the auth routes. We're going to head over to our API keys and grab this secret key. Drop that in here, and we'll get the directory ID and webhook secret a little bit later as we step through the setup process. This session secret is something that's used by the app for managing sessions for Express. So this can be any value we want, so we can put in something like super secret, and that's going to be okay for now. You can also generate a UUID, whatever you want. Now that we've got this running, we can close this. We'll get back into it later, and we're going to npm run dev, and this starts up our app on localhost 3000. Inside, you can see that we've got our homepage of the app. We've got a page for the docs, and then we've got some pages that are password protected. So we've got the dashboard and the team. And if I try to navigate to these, it actually redirects me straight back to the homepage. So let's log in. This goes to Okta, which we're using as our ID provider, and we log in, and that's the SSO flow that'll take us back to the app. And now we're logged in. We can get onto the dashboard. We can go onto the team page, which isn't implemented yet. And you can see that we have the ability to create new posts, and we can also delete posts if we so choose. So our goal here is to get our app synced up with activity in Okta. We want it so that if I take one of my accounts and deactivate it, like this user here, this user should no longer be able to log in to this app. And we also want to make sure that permissions get set so that my user currently has access to delete everybody's posts, not just my own. If we take me out of that group, I should no longer have access to this. So that's what we're going to be setting up. And that's why SCIM is so important. It saves the IT admin at the company a whole bunch of trouble and time in having to go in and manually manage this, not just in Okta, but also in each app that they subscribe to as a company. So to do that, we're going to head over to our WorkOS page. We're going to go into our organizations, and inside here, we're going to set up a directory. I'm going to choose Okta, and you can give it any name you want. I like to name it something descriptive so I remember where it goes. And then we get our directory ID. So the first thing I want to do is come back to my .env, and I'm going to put in that directory ID there. So at this point, we need to get these details into Okta. So let's head over to our Okta page. So in our app that we're using for single sign-on, we're going to also enable SCIM provisioning, which we can do on the application homepage here. I'm going to hit edit, check this enable SCIM provisioning and save. And then on the provisioning page, I'm going to edit this, and we've got this base URL, which is going to be our endpoint. Then we need the unique identifier field. That's going to be our email. So for the provisioning actions, we want to grab all of these. We're not going to import groups. Our app doesn't send anything back. We're also going to choose an HTTP header, and then we need to put in that bearer token. So we're going to come and grab that token, put that in here, and save. Next, click this edit button. So we want to send events for creating users, updating user attributes, and deactivating users. We don't care about passwords, so we can save. Then we need to make sure that the app is assigned to people. So this app was already assigned to everyone, but we've got another group that we want, and we're going to assign it to our authors group. And these are people who have the privilege to post on the site. So we can, if we want to, specify details in here, or we can just save, and then we hit done. So next we want to push our groups. So we're going to head to this push groups from this drop down here. We're going to say find groups by name, and let's grab the authors. And if there's no match found, we want to create the group, save, and it's going to say pushing. And once it says active, if we head back over to directory sync here, we can see that we've got our groups and there are no users in that group. So if we head into our authors and we say to assign people, we can add it to our active users. So now once that's finished, we can see that we've got our authors group is over here. And then if we head over to our users, we can see our 2 users. And that means that directory sync is set up. If we look at our directory events, we can see that as groups get activated, as users get created, as groups get updated, we get those events coming straight into WorkOS, which we will now be able to sync into our app once we've set up a webhook. So to set up a webhook, we're going to head over to the webhooks configuration, and we need to create a webhook endpoint. But before we can do that, we need an endpoint that we can actually call. And because we're working locally, we can't publicly access localhost, but we do have a tool called ngrok. And what ngrok is going to let us do is we can say ngrok HTTP, and then we want to expose port 3000. If we open this up, we can see that the forwarding is being done from this public URL over to our localhost 3000. So we can copy that. And then if we look into our API, we can see that we've got this directory sync route. And the way that our routes are working is that they are all nested under the name of the file. So /API/directory sync is what we're going for, which means that in here, we're going to put in this ngrok endpoint, and then we're going to hit /API/directory sync. And then we need to make sure that we're keeping track of all of those directory events. So all the directory events, group events, and all of the user events. And once we create that endpoint, now that we've got this running, we will see any events that come through get logged here. So if we head over to Okta and we go into our assignments, so let's create a new group here. And so we're going to add the viewers group and save and go back. And then we can put somebody into this group. So let's assign, let's see, Gail is already in there. Let's add my user as well. And here you can see that my user just got added into this group of viewers. So at this point, we've got events going from Okta through the WorkOS directory sync all the way into our app via this webhook endpoint, but we're not actually handling them yet. So the next thing we need to do is actually make some changes based on the webhook data that comes through. So to do that, we need to go back to these webhooks. Let's click into here and we get a signing secret. That's going to be the last environment variable we need. So if we open up our .env, we can drop this in to the webhook secret, save that, and now we're done messing with the .env. Let's stop and restart the server to make sure that we've got all of those environment variables loaded properly. And then we're going to update our API. So the first thing we need to do is bring in this WorkOS package. Next, let's create a new instance of WorkOS using our API key. And then instead of console logging, we're going to grab the payload. We get the headers, specifically this WorkOS signature header, and we use that along with this construct event method to make sure that we've got a valid request. And that's so that people can't spoof anything, send us bogus requests if they figure out what our endpoint is. So the way this works is you take the data payload, you take this webhook secret, and then you hash them together to make this signature. And if this signature matches the signature generated here, then you know that both parties had access to this webhook secret, and you can be reasonably certain that this is a legitimate request. So this then is going to represent all of the data that was sent from the webhook, which we saw console logged out earlier. So next, we can make decisions on how to change things based on what the event type is. So we're going to use a switch statement. I know people have feelings about switch statements, but I find them to be very useful for this type of data processing. The first thing we're going to do is handle when a user gets added to or removed from a group, and that's what these events are. We're going to grab out the user and group data from our webhook. Then we look up their current roles from the database. We check whether or not the role should be added or removed and do exactly that. Then we run this creator update user method from our database to update with any changes that came through. If they change their first name, last name, if they have new roles, and then we check whether or not they're active by checking the state in this user object. And right now, if a default, if we haven't handled the event type, we'll just log that so that we can see there's an event type we still need to handle. Next up, we want to handle when a new user is created. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to grab that user data and we're going to drop it right into our creator update user call, nothing else needed. And finally, If a user is updated to inactive or suspended, or their account is deleted entirely, we're going to deactivate that user using their email. And we're deactivating instead of deleting because we don't want to lose the reference to their name if they posted something. Because as a team member, I can see posts and I want to make sure that this doesn't become a blank or that these posts get lost forever. Now, if you do have a production app, you will need to implement an option to fully permanently delete a user and all of their data. For this demo, I didn't implement that, but do keep in mind that for regulatory compliance, you would need to implement that if you went further. So you could set that up where maybe on the user deleted, you could fully delete their account and all their data. Whereas if they're updated to inactive or suspended, you could hold on to it just in case they get reactivated. But that's up to you. That's a little outside the scope of what we're building today. And with this being set, you're actually kind of all running now. You're ready to go. So with this in place, you have the ability now to actually handle user deletion, syncing, all those kinds of things. And we can see this in action if we look at our current roles. So right now, when we're listing content, we check to see if it's the current user. So if the post author matches the currently logged in user, or if the currently logged in user has the admin's role. And if they have either of those things, then we show an option to delete the post. If we don't have that admin role, we should only see the delete option for our own users. So let's take my user out of the group. So to do that, I'm going to go into my directory and I'm going to go into groups. I'm going to get into admins here, and then I'm going to remove my user from the admins group. And when I refresh the page, we can see that it's been synced now and I don't have that permission anymore. We add me back in, refresh the page, and there it is. I've got my admin permissions back. So this is a near real-time sync between Okta and our app. So as you can imagine, IT teams love this, especially at huge companies, because they get to manage who in the company has what permissions using these groups right in their identity provider. And then all apps that have SCIM provisioning will immediately update to reflect those changes. So again, remove the permission, refresh over here, and it takes a few seconds for that to disappear on my end. And then if we assign that again, a couple seconds later, I've got it right back. So this is really handy, really powerful, and a really, really big selling point for companies with hundreds or thousands of employees. Okay, but now let's log in as a user that's not an admin. So I'm going to log in as a different user here, and I'm logged in as Charlie. And now I can see that I've got my delete option for me, but not for other users. And then if I leave on this side, I'm logged out of Okta. If I log back in as my admin user over here, later, let's decide that Charlie decides to leave the company. So when that happens, we come in here as the IT team and we deactivate this user. So now that Charlie's deactivated, I don't want this session to continue. And because we've got SCIM provisioning, when I refresh the page, I'm logged out. I'm no longer able to access that dashboard. So it's near instant. On the next request, this comes through and any active sessions in the app are deleted for this user that's no longer an active member of the directory. So again, you can just see why IT teams care so much about this and why it's such a big selling factor as you get into the larger and larger customers as a SaaS product. But that's not all, because I've got a bonus tip, which is you can actually use directory sync as a way to grow the adoption of your SaaS app within a company like this. Because if you've got directory sync in place, you can actually use it as a way to grow your SaaS adoption within a company. That directory sync tells us who somebody's teammates are. That's how directory sync works. So we can show them their teammates and encourage them to invite the people that they need to collaborate with in the app right into your app. And as more and more SaaS apps are moving to a per seat model, so this is a really good way to grow adoption, and it's win-win because your customers want to use the app for collaboration. You want more users in your app. And by using directory sync, you're able to show them their teammates to make it really, really easy and organic for them to start bringing in the people that they want to collaborate with. So let's get this set up. Inside the dashboard route, we're going to bring in that WorkOS package again, and then set up a new instance of WorkOS using our API key. Next, head down to this team route. And inside of it, we're going to get rid of this empty teammates array, and we're going to send a call to the WorkOS directory sync to list users. We pass in the directory ID, and then we're going to make sure that we show all the users that aren't the current user. So we just filter out the currently logged in user and otherwise show the details for the rest of their team. So if we save this and refresh the page, we can see now all of the teammates that are available to our current user. Now we can update this a lot of ways. You can grow it. You could could say, only show me people who are in groups, only show me people who are in my department, or whatever metadata we are provided by the company, we can use to make this experience better. But in the short term, this is a really, really handy way to make it possible for our users to organically invite their teammates, which again is a win-win-win for everybody.
Third-party SaaS is a huge source of stress for larger companies' IT teams. They've got complicated vetting and auditing processes that they have to go through for any tool that they want to bring in-house. So if you take advantage of their already vetted directory and user management system by using SCIM provisioning, you are then able to have a huge advantage. SCIM provisioning provides even the largest customer confidence that you're going to be able to keep up with their demands as they add hundreds or thousands of users into their directory as part of their day-to-day work. Thanks again to WorkOS for sponsoring this video. And remember, if this was useful for you, I have a newsletter where I send all sorts of information like this in video and written form. So make sure you subscribe to get all those details. Thanks, friends. We'll see you next time.